Hello there, welcome back to this channel. It's Bright Daniel from Bwave Ict, and I'm so excited to have you here. Today we'll talk about variables in C. So what are variables? I like to think of variables as containers that hold specific information or data. Now, a perfect example of variables could be like thinking of the container in your house that stores salt. Let's say a container that stores salt in your house. So that container only stores salt. Now it could store different types of salt. It could store different product of salt. But that container is only specific to storing salt. So you're not going to store water in that container. Instead, you will need another container to store water. So there are different kinds of containers, but these containers store different kinds of specific contents. Now that's how variables work in C. There are different kinds of variables, but these variables store specific contents or specific data. Now, to be able to work with variables very well, we must first understand what are data types. Now, the contents you're storing are the data. So the data are the contents. Any content at all is data. And so data type is almost self-explanatory. Now, the type of the contents you want to store, that is data type. So data type are the representation of data. For example, if you type ABC and then 123, everything you just type now are data. So if I come here and I say ABC 123, these are all data, but these are different type of data. For example, 1 is a number data. So this is a number, while A is a letter. A is a letter, then 1 is a number. So different types of data, but of course, A and 1 are both data. Now, data types help to specify that, okay, this is a number data or this is a letter data. So we have different kinds of data types in C. There are four most common ones. We have the ints, we have the char, we have the floats, and we have the double. Now, these are the four most popular and common data types in C. We also have a lot more, but these ones are just very, very common because we use them almost every time we write our programs. Now, when we see in the int data type, it's used to store whole numbers. So int stores whole numbers, and then char here, or char, however you call it, is used to store letters representation. Now, floats is used to store decimal numbers. So float stores decimals, and then double is like a double version of float. It's used to store big decimals. So here, big decimals for doubles. So int, char, float, and double used to store whole numbers, letters, decimals. So decimals are just numbers with points, like 4.8. That's a decimal. Now, if you have big decimals, that's very, very big numbers that you want to store as floats, then you have to use double. And so these are data types in C. And so when we talk about variables, variables store a specific data type. Okay, so you have the data type here, int, and let's say the number is 8, right? You use a variable to store this data now somewhere. So the data itself is 8, the data type is 8, and now you declare a variable to store it. Now let's use examples to do this explanation of variables and how we can work with them in C. To be able to work with variables in C, we have to do a couple of things. And the first one is to declare a variable. So the very first thing we'll be doing here is the declaration of a variable. And let me simply show you how we can declare a variable. So I'm going to come here now, and to declare a variable, you have to give the variable a name. And so let's say we want to store the age of someone. I would call this variable age, and then I would put my data type. So we'll say int age. And once we do this, this will now be a variable that we have declared. So just like this, now we have declared a variable. The variable name is age, but it has the data type of int. Now what this tells the computer and the compiler is that, okay, the data we want to store here, or the content we want to store here, is a number. That is, it's of the data type int. And the name of this content we want to store is age. And after declaration, the next thing we want to do is to initialize that variable. Now, how do we initialize the variable? We do that by saying equal to, and then maybe 50. So by adding a value here, 50, with this equal to sign, we are saying, hey, look, our variable now is age of the data type int, and the value is 50. It means that whenever we call age in our computer, it goes and say, hey, what is stored inside this container age, and it brings out 50 for us. So declaring and initialization, just like this, we have our variables done. Now there are some laws that variable must follow. For example, why giving a variable name, for example, we have this one age, you cannot start a variable with underscore, right? You cannot start a variable with something like this. So you can't say your variable starts with this here. This is wrong. Also, if you call age here with small letter and you somewhere say age with capital letter, these are two different variables. So variables are very case sensitive. So here you could do age, and then you can't put a space and say age of. This of here will not be treated as part of these variables. So your variables has to be very concise and basically follow these small laws that variables have. So after calling age here, how do we use this variable? Okay, so let's write a small program to use this variable. Now I'm going to say printf here, and let's say his age is, I can't come here now and write age like this. No, this is not going to work. So in C, we have to do something known as format specifier. And this %d is something basically known as a format specifier. A format specifier is just to tell us or specify the format we are working with, or the kind of data type we are working with. Okay, so when we say %d, we are simply saying, hey, we are working with an integer variable. Okay, so %d is the format specifier for an integer. We'll talk more about other format specifiers for other data types, because previously I had said here, so I think I should just write it down here, that we have data types such as ints, we have char, we have floats, and we have double. So int, char, float, and double, these are various data types, and all of them have their formats specifiers. So I'm just going to add this here, and for an integer, it has the format specifier of %d. Now a character has the format specifier known as %c. It means that anytime you want to work with a character, or you want to call that your character or the character variable, you have to use %c. A float has the format specifier of %f, and a double has the format specifier of %lf, which is a long float. Okay, so to call this now, here we have to put a comma here and then the name of the variable, so age. By doing this, we are simply saying, hey, we want the format specifier of an integer. So this is more like a placeholder. Okay, you could think of this %d here as a placeholder. The name format specifier, you could just think of it as a placeholder that stays in place for this variable here called age. So whenever we run this code, its age is %d. We are not going to be saying %d after running this code, but we'll see what the value of this %d is, and that is currently age. So here, the value that age holds is 50, and that's exactly what we would be saying when we run this program. So let's try now to run our program. I'm going to open my terminal. You can come to view once again, click on terminal, or you could simply say Ctrl+ on your keyboard, and that will open your terminal. Now my terminal is opened. The next thing I will do is to cd into the folder where I have written this. So cd into variables folder. And then I'm going to compile this code. So gcc var.c here. And I'm going to be storing the results in an output file called var. So gcc var.c -o and var. Let's run this and let's see what we have here. Okay, our code is compiled. Now let's run it. So var, and we have his age here is 50. That is because we've stored age as a variable that contains the value of 50. So it's like having that container, and then when you go into the container, you look inside, you see the salt. The program has looked inside this age container and it has seen 50, and that's why it displays 50 for us here. So we have %d 50. Now, what about character? So let's say character of grade. So we want to say grade, and this grade would be A. Of course, everyone wants a high grade. So the law that follows character is that we have to use a single quote here while writing a character. Now, a character is 1 letter. We can't say A, B, C here. That would be wrong. So a character must be a single letter while using the char here, grade. And let's go give other examples, maybe floats. And then we could say float of CGPA, since that would be a good example. And the CGPA should be 4.1. Okay, and so when we're working with numbers, of course, we don't need to put the quotation marks, either single quotes or double quotes. We could just run it, or we could just write it like this. Now, as you can see, we must end each of our statements with the semicolon. And that's a must in C, or else we would run into problems while running our code. And of course, if you run into any of such problems, the last video talked about debugging, and I'm sure you can sort it out yourself. So how do we call all of this now? Age, grade, CGPA, and maybe a double for a large number. We'll be doing that later on, but let's just call these three. So now I would say his grade is, and then here I would say is CGPA is so and so. Okay, so how do we call this? We must use their format specifiers. That is telling the compiler that, hey, what we want to call here is of the type either character or float or integer or whatever. So like we explained before, the grade here is of a character. So we say %C. And what's the name of this variable? Grade. So we call the variable that we want here and say grade. Next up, CGPA is of the type floats, and the format specifier for floats, you can see it right up here. I have written it so you could always check. It's %F. So here I can say %F. And here I can say CGPA. Okay. If we run all of this now, we should be getting things. Now, there's something I need to add, and that's a new line here, so that this code runs in a new line. So all of this should appear in a new line. I'm going to run down this program, so let me drag my terminal up here, clear the screen, and run my program. Okay. And so we see we have this. His age is 50, his grade is A, his CGPA is 4.100000. And hey, that's exactly not what we're looking for. We're just looking for 4.1. So with floats, except if you give it precision, it's always going to add about six digits after the points. That is the standard. It's always going to give you 6 digits after the points. To solve that problem, all we have to do is % points and then say how many digits you want after the points. So if we say %.1f, what we'll be having is just 1 digit after the points. Okay, so let's do that now and let's run this, and we have his CGPA is 4.1. Now, if you come here and say %.2f, you'll be having 2 digits after the points, meaning 4.10, and just like that. But if you leave it at just %f, you'll be getting 6 digits. And where there are no other digits, is going to replace all those values with a 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, now someone may be wondering, what is the need of storing things in variables? Okay, why not just come here and say his grade is A? Why store it in a variable? Now imagine you have this program, maybe you want to change this now. So let's say we want to print out a grade of E plenty times. So we want to, I'm going to just do this now many times just to show you one of the importance of storing things in variables. So I'm just going to paste this so many times here, and okay, I think it's okay now. So I'm just going to also replace this age with another grade. So we have grade plenty times here. I think about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Let's make it 10 just to show you the example clear. We have the grade 10 times. And let's say someone says, hey, his grade is not 4.1, his grade is 3.0. So what do? We just come here and we change this to 3.0. So we change the values from 4.1 to 3.0. Or we are changing the data from 4.1 to 3.0. Remember, float is the data type, 3.0 is the data. Now, what stores this data and the data type together? That's your variables. And so the variable here is CGPA of the data type floats and having the value of 3.0. Now, we've changed it to 3.0. If we come back here and run our code for any reason, we would see 3.0 appear every single place. So, oops, I was working with grade and not CGPA. Sorry about that. So let me change the grade now to from A to B. So you can see A appears all these times here, but I'm going to change this now from A to B, and you can see his grade is B, 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 everywhere has appeared. Now, if we had not stored this B in a variable, and I say, hey, changes the grade from B to C, it means that for each individual one would come here and say his grade is C, would come down, his grade is C, his grade is C, his grade is C. Imagine having to write his grade is C about 10 times here. just because we want to do one small change. That would be very, very stressful and time consuming. And so to make us work efficiently, manipulate data efficiently, we just store it here. And if we want to make any changes, we quickly make the changes here. This one is definitely for our Python lovers. If you're interested in learning Python, learning frameworks such as Flask, databases like SQL, building big projects like blog, portfolio, e-commerce, then join our software engineering training focusing on Python from October 1st running till December 31st. These 3 months will teach you all the basics to intermediate of Python, Python frameworks such as Flask, and databases such as SQL. You would also learn how to host projects, you would build a portfolio, and you would have the chance to gain internship with Bwave Ict and develop your work experience, build your skill set, and definitely have everything you need to go on and apply for jobs. Yes, our training starting from the 1st of October up until December is designed to help you become a software engineering pro with Python. So if you're interested, click the link below and send us a message to join the training. I hope you completely understood this tutorial on variables in C. In our next video, we will be talking about operators in C. Until then, it's a goodbye from me.